Hurricanes are natural disasters. From home damage, fatalities, and overall devastation, these monstrous storms wait for no one. Over the years, communities and states have continued working together to prevent hurricane destruction. However, the issue resides in the fact that Mother Nature refuses to be controlled. Hurricane destruction can often start out small, and WNCT Chief Meteorologist Jerry Jackson describes how these storms grow.
Every year in the tropics, really every day during tropical season, we track little small clusters of thunderstorms out in the open Atlantic. Many don't form and develop into tropical systems, but sometimes they do. If you leave a little area of thunderstorms over very warm water, that very warm water acts as a fuel source. The warmer the water, usually the more rising motion you get. As the air begins to rise, the pressure it exerts near the surface actually begins to lower. In other words, a low pressure area starts to form. If that low pressure area remains unchecked, if there's no wind shear to tear it down, it may eventually develop into not only a tropical depression, but maybe get strong enough to become a tropical storm. Then it receives a name. Its winds would be 39 miles an hour or higher. Once you get on up to around 74 miles an hour and start to go beyond that, now you're starting to talk about hurricane formation there. And of course, hurricanes can become quite strong, much stronger than 75 mile per hour winds. You can go on up as high as 150 mile per hour winds or higher.
The Outer Banks of North Carolina has endured many of these natural disasters. Many islanders consider themselves experts on hurricanes and safety. Danny Couch, the Dare County Commissioner, says their heritage gives them the natural knowledge of the weather on the island.
We handle hurricanes from an element of experience. In the 7 unincorporated villages that make up this 56-mile long island, there's about 4,000 people, a little over 4,000 people that live here. If you were to take a phone book, about half, roughly 2,000, maybe a little more, can actually trace their ancestry back 8, 9 generations or more. Therefore, that experience, that willingness, and that innate knowledge of living here gives us an edge in preparing for the storms.
Preparation is important when dealing with hurricanes, which can involve evacuation. Hatteras Island Volunteer Fire Chief Jeremy Hicks says the goal is to keep information flowing to the public when dangerous weather strikes.
We're fortunate here, we don't have to do a whole lot of prep at this fire station because we're elevated, but we'll pick up the grounds and then we start trying to get information to the public. So through various networks of emergency management, National Weather Service, we're in contact with those folks. We try to get the information out because sometimes a lot of the people get wrong information or it gets construed.
Aside from personal safety, property is important too.
In terms of personal property, the first steps you want to take, because you're dealing with insurance and they're going to be looking for some proactive measures on your part or your claims could be compromised, you want to make sure that you're going to do everything you can to protect your personal property. Cars, get them up. Things like air conditioners, heating and air units, do what you can to make sure they're not going to be compromised by floodwaters. Anything loose that can blow around, get it in an area where it's not going to be able to do damage. Any repairs you might need to do your houses leak-wise, once a leak starts, it'll only get worse. You make sure that your house is prepared for a wind and water event.
Constructing a hurricane-proof home is also key. Midget Realty owner Tim Midget owns more than 480 tourist cottages in the Outer Banks. He says they make sure that rentals are safely and securely built to withstand a hurricane.
Well, one, North Carolina has a really good building code already, and then of course a lot of what we build and a lot of what does get built out here is in what is called like a velocity flood zone. So it requires additional pile penetration and things like that. But there's a lot of wind-related and flood-related regulations that are already in place, and there's a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline. I think that will further enhance and better that side of the business.
One of the many homeowners who wasn't so lucky is Dennis Richardson. His home was flooded in 2016's Hurricane Matthew.
It was pretty significant. We probably had 6 to 12 inches of water through the house in different parts, and we had to cut out 4 foot up the wall so you can see basically everything that was cut out and put back.
After Richardson's home was immersed in floodwaters, he worked with an insurance company to file his claim and eventually hired a house mover to come and lift the house to get it out of the floodplains. Now his home is about 8 feet above the ground and hasn't suffered water damage since Matthew. He describes what he and other community members do to ensure people and their homes are taken care of in the aftermath.
Yeah, so I help people with their insurance process and everything after the storm, and that's probably why mine took a long time. The contractor is a friend, and he was able to go to some elderly people's houses first and get them back in their property before mine. So yeah, It's the good part about living in Hatteras is everybody's a real team player, and the community is really strong. Before a storm, but definitely after a storm, everybody really comes together to help each other and to support one another.
Hurricane aftermath and cleanup is part of the after effect, and Hatteras volunteers and workers make it a priority.
Once the storm has passed and it's safe, this is kind of a hub. Prior to, we'll get waters and MREs and cleanup kits from emergency management, from the Red Cross, and we'll stage that here. And then we're very fortunate in this village because we get a lot of volunteers after a storm, especially after we've had some damage. Hurricane Matthew, we had hundreds of volunteers that just showed up. And we had a lot of homes that were damaged, and we had a lot of people that were out of a home. So teams were coming from all over the state, from Virginia. We had teams from South Carolina. We coordinated the efforts of what needed to be done in the village.
Hicks says situational awareness is important too. He encourages people who don't have immediate rescue access to have backup water, food, and a plan. BeReady.gov also has a list of important items to have in cases where you need to survive on the bare minimum. Please do make sure to pay attention to local and national news during a hurricane. If an evacuation is ordered, getting out of the said area is important for safety and survival. In Greenville, Madeline Ashley, 9 on your side.